As we said in the last section, cells are the basic unit of life. So now our cells are going to be arranged into tissues which work together for a common function. About 70% of our living tissue is made of water. Around another 26% is composed of macromolecules. And these macromolecules are large biological molecules that make up all living things. Everything else is ions and other small molecules. As we said, 26% of all living tissue is made of macromolecules. So let's look at that 26%. Macromolecules are large molecules that we often refer to as polymers. These polymers are made of smaller molecules known as monomers, and these monomers are typically linked together through covalent bonds. And each of our different macromolecules plays a critical role in organisms with regards to running the body, containing information on how to run the body, and providing the energy needed to do so. So let's talk about each of our macromolecules, starting with our nucleic acids. The monomer of our nucleic acids are what we call nucleotides. And if you remember, we have A, T, C's, and G's, or we also have the time when we change out our T's to U's. And our monomers is what is going to make up our polymers. And so this is going to make up DNA and RNA, with the U type being in the RNA. So if we look at the function that nucleic acid gives us, they are the blueprints for life. They store, transmit, and express our genetic information. It is DNA. That's what makes you you. So we're going to call this the informational molecules. Now, if we move on to our lipids, the monomers are our fatty acids and glycerol. And our fatty acids is going to be put together to make our different types of lipids. So we could have fats, oils, steroids, and phospholipids. And the functions that these types of molecules give us is that they are used in our cell membrane, they're used for protection and for insulation. So we are going to call these our energy storage molecules. Now, as we move on to our carbohydrates, if we look at their monomer, they have this big long word called the monosaccharides. And examples of monosaccharides are things like glucose, fructose, and glycogen. And carbs are used structurally to transport stored energy and for recognition and signaling pathways. And lastly, we have our proteins. The monomer of our protein is amino acids. If you remember from biology, proteins have many different functions and examples. So one important one here that we can add is enzymes. So we have enzymes, hormones, proteins, transport proteins, and many, many more. And that makes this type being used for everything else, as proteins are used for many, many, many things. I forgot. Our carbs are also energy storage molecules, just like the lipids. So there's still some key points we want to note about our macromolecules before we move on. As we said, your DNA is organized into 46 different chromosomes. And of those 46 chromosomes, it's made into thousands of different genes. And these genes are providing the instructions for making proteins. These proteins are responsible for running your body. So as we move on, talking about our DNA and our genes, one single gene gets transcribed into a copy of your mRNA. This mRNA is going to leave the nucleus and head to a ribosome to be translated and then modified into a functioning protein. As we said, proteins provide so many functions in your body that we need to specifically talk about one in particular, and that is enzymes. Enzymes are mostly, as we said, proteins that act as biological catalysts. These catalysts speed up chemical reactions by lowering the activation energy needed to get their reaction going. These enzymes are highly specific, meaning that they only bind to certain substance or reactants at their active site. And you can see in our little diagram over here that we have our enzyme with our substrate joining together at our active site here. Our enzymes then are going to remain unchanged after the reaction, and they can be reused because the enzyme itself is not changing. And our enzymes are critical for regulation of life processes in all organism systems that make up an organism.